Okay, so today we're going deep on trading card games.
Yeah.
Specifically, kind of like a snapshot in time.
A time capsule.
Yeah. April 8th, 2025, what was going on. We've got a really interesting mix of stuff, articles, forum posts, those little snippets of conversation that you catch.
Yeah, like the water cooler talk.
Exactly. And the goal is to kind of pull out what were the really big things, what were people talking about, what was moving and shaking.
Right. So if you want to know what had people buzzing in both MTG and Pokemon TCG land on that particular Tuesday.
This is your fast track.
This is it, yeah.
All right, well, let's jump right in then.
Let's go.
And I think starting with Magic is a good place to start.
Sure.
One of the articles we have is a limited set review excerpt from PCG Player Infinite for Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Nice.
Now, for those who haven't done a draft, limited is all about building a deck on the fly from booster packs as you open them.
Right. Crack open those packs, see what you get, and build a deck from that.
And this review uses a rating system for individual cards, 0.0 to 5.0.
Right.
And when you were reading this, what was something that kind of struck you as a key part of how they're evaluating cards?
Well, the thing that stood out to me right away is that they kind of baked in this assumption with multicolor cards.
Oh, okay.
And the assumption is that those cards fit well in your deck.
Okay.
Right? It's like they're saying, okay, we're rating this multicolor card as if you're already going to be in those colors.
I see.
But the challenge in draft is that early on, you don't know what colors you're going to be in. You're still figuring out your mana base.
Yeah, it's almost like you get like a big, elaborate Lego piece, but you haven't built the foundation to even put it on yet.
Yeah, exactly. You're still working on those basic bricks, and then they throw in, this crazy dragon or whatever.
Right, and you're like, well, this is really cool, but can I actually cast it?
Exactly. And I think that's where you get this tension between, like, the raw power level of a card and the practicality of actually getting to play it.
So it's not just about like how good the card is in isolation.
Right. It's how good is it in the context of a limited environment where you have to draft it.
Okay, so context is king.
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing they mention as kind of a tiebreaker when they're comparing cards is flexibility.
Right.
So what does that mean in this context of like building a limited deck?
So think about it this way. You're early in the draft. You're looking at two cards that are kind of similar in power level.
Okay.
But one card only works in this very specific color combination.
Right.
And the other card can be played in a couple of different color pairs.
It's a little bit more open-ended.
Exactly. That flexibility is really valuable because it keeps your options open as you draft.
Like that Lego piece that can connect in more ways.
Yeah, you don't want to lock yourself into a strategy too early, especially when you don't know what cards you're going to see later on.
You don't want to paint yourself into a corner.
Exactly.
Now, it's interesting because they don't give explicit ratings for every single card in this little excerpt that we have, but Essence Scatter, I think, is implicitly viewed as pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Essence Scatter.
So why, in general, in Limited, would a counterspell like that be not as good as it might be in other formats?
Yeah, so this gets to a really key difference between limited and constructed formats.
Okay.
In limited, the games tend to be a lot faster and more focused on creatures.
Right. It's about like getting your creatures on the board, hit your opponent before they hit you.
Exactly. And a counterspell is a reactive card. You're waiting for your opponent to do something so you can counter it.
It's not like proactively advancing your own game plan.
Right. And in limited, that can be really dangerous because if you're holding up mana to counter a spell, you might miss your chance to play your own creatures.
Yeah, you fall behind on board and then you're in trouble.
Exactly. So unless a counterspell is like super versatile, it often just doesn't do enough in limited.
Okay, so proactivity over reactivity in limited.
I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. Now, they also list this interesting collection of cards. I'm just going to run through the names here. Burst, Lightning, Empyrean Eagle, Dazzling, Angel Bite Down, Eager Truffle Snout.
Okay.
Squad Rallier, Wary Thespian Ambush, and even just generic wolf and hare tokens.
Yo, that's quite a list.
Right. What do we think they're doing by listing all those cards together, even though they don't give them like specific ratings?
My guess is they're trying to give you a sense of the rating scale without explicitly saying this is a 2, this is a 4.
So it's like showing you examples across a spectrum of what you might see.
Exactly. You've got some removal spells like Burst Lightning,
Right.
Some creatures with different levels of power like the Eagle and the Truffle Snout,
Right.
and cards that make multiple creatures like Squad Rallier.
Even the tokens, it's like showing you what kind of board states you might encounter.
Right. It's like they're saying, okay, these are the kinds of things you're going to see, and the ratings are relative to these.
So even without specific numbers, it gives you some context.
Exactly.
All right, let's get to an actual card with a rating here.
Okay.
Jeskai Revelation They give this a 3.5 out of 5 for limited.
Solid.
Yeah. So what makes this card above average in their eyes?
Well, the key here is in the description, they say it's a powerful combination with, and then there's some text missing, probably a card name.
Right.
But then they say plus card neutral effect.
Okay.
And that card neutral part is really important because it means that even if you don't have that other card to combo with, you're not losing anything by playing Jeskai Revelation.
So it's like it has this bonus effect, but even without the bonus, it's not a bad card.
Right. It's like getting a main course that comes with a free side dish.
Okay.
Even if you don't eat the side dish, you didn't lose anything by getting it.
I like that analogy.
And on top of that, it also mills 3 cards, which can be good for setting up later plays if you're in a graveyard deck.
Okay, so it has some synergy potential there, too.
Right.
Now, they do say the main drawback is the casting cost.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell us?
Well, it probably means it's a little bit expensive mana-wise.
Okay.
Not something you're going to play early in the game.
So it's a card with a high ceiling, but you need to have the right setup to use it. All right, let's talk about another card here. Lie in Wait.
Okay.
They describe this as a solid little 2-for-1.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Now, 2-for-1 in Magic, that's like a magic word.
Yeah, it's like the Holy Grail.
Explain why is that so good? Why is that so powerful?
Well, because you're getting 2 effects for the price of 1 card.
Right, like buy one, get one free.
Exactly, and that puts you ahead on card advantage, which is a big deal in Magic.
Okay, so wait, what's the 2-for-1 action here?
Well, they highlight the milling ability again, and they specifically mention the synergy with a Sultai strategy.
So Sultai, that's the blue, black, green color combination.
Right, and they often have decks that care about the graveyard.
Okay, so milling cards into your graveyard is actually a good thing in those colors.
Exactly, and you can really feel the reviewer's excitement for this card. They say, I'm not standing still, I'm lying in wait, at least I hope to be, when drafting Sultai.
So if you see yourself going in those colors, Lie in Wait becomes a high pick.
Absolutely, it's a signal to be on the lookout for this card.
All right, well, let's shift gears now and talk about the other big TCG.
Pokemon.
Yes, Pokemon, and specifically on April 8th, 2025, because that's our focus here.
Right.
And it seems like a lot of the buzz was around the upcoming Glory of Team Rocket set.
Yeah, even though it wasn't actually releasing until later in the month.
Right, but people were already hyped.
The hype was real.
And what's interesting is that a lot of the discussion is focused on like specific cards that had been revealed.
Right.
And what their impact might be on the game.
Yeah, people were trying to figure out how these cards were going to shake up the meta.
So let's start with one that seems to have caught people's attention. Crobat X.
Oh, yeah.
This card was being called very, very fun.
Yeah, Crobat X was generating a lot of buzz.
So what makes it so appealing? What's all the fuss about?
Well, the key seems to be its lethal return attack.
Okay.
It lets you deal damage and then return Crobat X to your hand.
So you hit and then you run away.
Exactly. It's like a ninja strike and then poof, it's gone.
And why is that good?
Well, it makes it really hard for your opponent to knock out Crobat X.
Because it's not sticking around on the board.
Right. And it also opens up some cool strategic possibilities, especially when you combine it with damage boosting items.
Okay, so you can kind of chip away at your opponent's Pokemon.
Exactly. Death by 1,000 cuts.
I like it on.
Oh.
Another card that was getting people talking was the Team Rocket's Petrol Supporter card.
Oh, yeah. That one's a powerhouse.
It was even called Redonkulous for Team Rocket decks.
Yeah, that's high praise.
So what makes it so powerful?
Well, its effect is super strong. It lets you search your deck for up to 3 basic Team Rocket's Pokemon.
Wow, 3, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge consistency boost for Team Rocket decks.
It reminds me of that old Pokemon collector card.
Right, which was a staple for so long because it let you set up your board so quickly.
So this is like a new version of that.
Yeah, and the fact that you can even use it on the first turn if you go first is insane.
So you can get your Team Rocket Pokemon out there right away.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a really scary card for your opponent to see.
All right, so we've got the hit and run Crobat X. We've got the super consistent Team Rocket's Petrol.
What else could we ask for?
Well, how about Team Rocket's Great Ball?
Oh, yeah, another way to get your Team Rocket Pokemon out.
Right. This is an item card, so what does it do?
It lets you search for either a basic or an evolution Team Rocket's Pokemon based on a coin flip.
So it's a little bit random, but it gives you options.
Exactly. And people were comparing it to the rotated capturing aroma.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Right. It was another really flexible search card.
So it seems like this set is really giving Team Rocket a lot of tools to get their Pokemon into play.
Yeah, it's looking like a very well-supported archetype.
Now, there's also Team Rocket's Venture Bomb, another item card.
Okay.
What's this one all about?
So this one is kind of interesting. It lets you put damage counters on either your opponent's active Pokemon or your own, depending on a coin flip.
So it's a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah, but it has some interesting potential.
How so?
Well, they specifically mentioned the synergy with Crobat X again. So you could use Venture Bomb to put a little damage on your opponent's Pokemon, making it easier for Crobat X to knock it out with lethal return.
So it's like setting up a knockout punch.
Exactly.
Now, the last card we're going to talk about in this initial wave of glory of Team Rocket hype is Team Rocket's Moltres X.
Oh, yeah. This one looks like a real problem.
A problem in a good way.
Right. In a good way for the person playing it.
What makes it so potentially disruptive?
Well, one of its attacks reduces the damage it takes.
So it's a little bit tanky.
Yeah, it can take a hit.
And his other attack?
Oh, that one is crazy.
What does it do?
It lets you discard your opponent's active Pokemon and all cards attached to it.
Wow, that's a board wipe.
Yeah, it can completely swing the game in your favor.
So this Moltres X seems like it could be a real game changer.
Absolutely. It's definitely one to watch out for.
All right, so lots of hype for Glory at Team Rocket even before it's released.
Makes sense.
But beyond that specific set, there's some other interesting things happening in the Pokemon TCG world on April 8th.
Okay, what else was going on?
Well, there was this mention of a buy-up of Walking Wait cards from the Wild Force set.
Interesting.
And this suggests that something was driving up demand for that card.
Right, like a new strategy had emerged, or maybe people were anticipating some synergy with the new Team Rocket set.
Yeah, unfortunately, our sources don't give us the specific reason.
It's too bad.
But it's just an example of how these market movements can happen.
Right. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint the exact cause.
Now, Journey Together, this was a set that had been released more recently at the time.
Okay.
And there were discussions about its pull rates and the overall value of the cards you could get.
Right.
And it sounds like it was a bit of a gamble to open packs of this set.
How so?
Well, they were saying that pulling the really rare and valuable special illustration rares, the Saros, was pretty difficult.
Oh, so it's hard to hit the jackpot.
Yeah, it was described as potentially painful.
Ouch.
But of course, if you did pull one of those chase cards, it could be quite profitable.
Right. High risk, high reward.
Now, on the flip side, the regular illustration rares were considered to be more common and therefore fairly cheap.
So there were some more budget-friendly options?
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you were just looking for specific artwork or cards to play with, rather than like the top dollar pulls.
Okay, so a mixed bag in terms of value.
Yeah, kind of a high-risk, high-reward set.
Makes sense.
Now, people were also comparing different sets to each other.
Oh, like how?
Well, Paleo Fates and Crown Zenith were being compared in terms of their prices
Okay.
and whether they were still being printed.
So this is all about gauging the rarity and potential future value of these sets.
Exactly. Crown Zenith was known for having better pull rates, and its reprint status would obviously affect its availability.
Right, if it's not being printed anymore, it's going to become more scarce.
And by comparing Paleo Fates to it, people were trying to figure out, okay, is this set going to go up in value or down in value?
So it's all about those market predictions.
Yeah, trying to see what the future holds.
Makes sense.
We also saw some early sales figures being compared.
Oh, interesting.
Apparently, Stellar Crown had better initial sales than Twilight Masquerade,
Okay.
while Temporal Forces and Paradox Rift were initially less popular.
So why do you think we see those different reactions right out of the gate?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors. You know, how appealing are the Pokemon in the set?
Right.
Are there any exciting new gameplay mechanics?
Or like chase cards that everyone wants?
Exactly, and just the general buzz and marketing around the set.
Yeah, the hype train can really get rolling for some sets.
And then there were two sets that were referred to as specialty sets, Prismatic Evolutions and 151.
Okay.
So what exactly makes a Pokemon TCG set a specialty set?
Well, they're different from the regular numbered expansions in a few ways.
Like how?
Well, they often have unique packaging. Sometimes they guarantee a certain number of rare cards per pack.
Okay.
And they usually have a specific theme or focus.
So 151, for example, that was all about the original 151 Pokemon.
Exactly. A real nostalgia trip.
And Prismatic Evolutions, I think that one had a focus on reprints with a special rainbow foil treatment.
Right. So they're not your typical expansion sets.
And that means they often have different supply and demand dynamics in the market.
Yeah, they can be harder to find, and that can drive up prices.
Now, this next comparison is really interesting to me. People were actually comparing Sun and Moon era sets
Okay.
in terms of the value of their sealed booster boxes.
So we're talking about sets that came out years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And this shows you that long-term perspective that some collectors have.
Right. They're thinking about how these sets are going to appreciate over time.
In the Sun and Moon era, That's a pretty significant chunk of Pokemon TCG history.
Yeah, it was a popular era with a lot of memorable sets.
So those sealed booster boxes,
Yeah.
they're becoming increasingly rare.
And as they become more scarce, the prices tend to go up.
So it's an interesting thing to track for those who see collecting as an investment.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the big elephant in the room, pull rates, reprints, and distribution issues.
Yeah, this was a major topic of conversation on April 8th.
And it seems like the upcoming reprint of Prismatic Evolutions was really driving a lot of the buzz.
You okay?
So why was this particular reprint so significant?
Well, Prismatic Evolutions has become a very popular set, and it has a lot of valuable cards on the secondary market.
Okay.
So when the reprint was announced, people who wanted to open the set were excited because they knew they wouldn't have to pay those high secondary market prices anymore.
Right. It's a chance to get those cards at a more reasonable price.
Exactly.
But of course, if you already owned sealed Prismatic Evolutions product, you were probably a little bit worried.
Yeah, because the reprint would increase the supply, which could lower the value of your existing collection.
Right. It's the classic supply and demand dynamic.
And the fact that there was a lot of uncertainty around the size of the reprint and when it would actually happen just added to the speculation.
Right. People were trying to figure out, okay, is this going to be a small reprint or a big reprint?
And when should I buy or sell?
Yeah, those are the million-dollar questions.
Literally.
Now, 151 was also expected to be reprinted.
Ah, yeah, that one was huge.
I mean, everybody loves the original 151 Pokemon.
Right. It's pure nostalgia.
So what do you think the expectations were around that reprint announcement?
Well, I imagine a lot of people were thrilled, especially those who missed out on the set the first time around.
Right. It's a second chance to get those cards.
Exactly. But just like with Prismatic Evolutions, the scale of the reprint would determine its impact on the market.
Right. A small reprint wouldn't do much to lower prices.
But a large reprint could really shake things up.
So it's a waiting game.
Yeah, seeing how it all plays out.
Now, on top of the reprints, there were also some distribution issues being reported,
Oh, right.
specifically with Journey Together.
What happened there?
Well, it sounds like there were some problems getting the set to stores.
Okay.
And as a result, stores were getting smaller allocations than they expected.
So less product to go around.
Exactly. And that can really mess with the market.
How so?
Well, when there's less product available, it creates scarcity. And that drives up prices.
So it's bad news for consumers.
Yeah, it can make it more expensive to get your hands on the set.
And it can also create frustration for collectors who can't find the products they're looking for.
Exactly. So these distribution issues definitely contributed to some of the discussion around Journey Together's market performance.
It's all connected.
Now, of course, with Glory of Team Rocket still on the horizon, people were already talking about pull rates
Oh, yeah.
and card reveals.
Always a hot topic.
I mean, everyone wants to know, how hard is it going to be to pull those chase cards?
Right. And how much are they going to be worth?
Exactly. And those reveals leading up to a set's release, they really build the anticipation.
Yeah, it's like a slow drip of information.
Keeps people on the edge of their seats.
Exactly.
Now, this next story is pretty crazy.
Okay, what is it?
Apparently, the demand for 151 was so high
We knew it was popular.
that people were actually going into retail stores,
Oh, okay.
actively searching for it.
That's not unusual.
But they were even trying to take it out of other people's shopping carts.
Wow, that's next level.
Right, like full-on Pokemon card frenzy.
It's like Black Friday, but for trading cards.
Yeah, it really shows you the power of nostalgia and the excitement that this set generated.
Absolutely. People were desperate to get their hands on those cards.
All right, so that's kind of the snapshot of what was happening on April 8th in terms of like the specific sets and products.
Okay.
But there was also a lot of broader market analysis and discussion about the future outlook.
Right. People were trying to make sense of the trends.
Exactly. So one of the things that came up was the idea of market corrections and people taking profits.
Okay.
And they were using Evolving Skies as an example.
Oh, yeah. That set went crazy for a while.
It did. It had a huge price spike, but then it kind of leveled off.
So what does that tell us about how the market works?
Which shows that these price swings are normal.
Right.
You know, the set can get really hot, and then as more product becomes available and people start selling to cash in, the price tends to stabilize.
It's like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, up and down. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the set won't go up in value again later on.
Right. It's just a natural part of the market cycle.
Now, interestingly, Astral Radiance was mentioned as a set that was showing a steady increase in value.
Okay.
And some people were even saying it was underrated.
Interesting. So why do you think a set might become more valuable over time, even if it wasn't initially a huge hit?
Well, sometimes a set gets overlooked when it's released.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another set that's getting more hype at the same time.
Right, gets overshadowed.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe people don't immediately recognize the potential of some of the cards.
Like a hidden gem.
Yeah. And then as time goes on and the supply of the set decreases, if those cards become more important in the competitive scene or more desirable to collectors, the price can start to climb.
So it's a slow burn.
Yeah, but it can pay off in the long run.
Makes sense.
Now, around April 8th, there was a sense that the market was slowing down a little bit.
Okay.
Like the price fluctuations weren't as wild as they had been.
And why do you think that was?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the upcoming reprints of Prismatic Evolutions and 151.
Right, those were the big events on the horizon.
Exactly. And when you have those major reprints coming up, people tend to be more cautious.
In what way?
Well, buyers might hold off on making big purchases because they think the reprints will lower prices.
Right.
And sellers might adjust their prices to stay competitive.
So it creates this kind of waiting game.
Yeah, everyone's kind of holding their breath to see what happens.
Makes sense.
Now, we did get some hints about potential bundle releases for the Prismatic Evolutions and 151 reprints.
Okay.
But the details were still pretty vague.
So what's the deal with bundles? How do they affect the market differently than just like booster boxes?
Well, bundles usually offer a better price per pack.
Okay.
So it's a more affordable way to get your hands on the set.
Right.
But the overall impact still depends on how many bundles are produced and how widely they're distributed.
So if the supply is still limited, it might not make a huge difference in terms of prices.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, one of the concerns that was being raised was that the number of reprints allocated might not be enough to meet demand.
Yeah, this is a common problem.
Right. And it's frustrating because even when there's a reprint, if the supply is too low, the prices don't really come down.
Yeah, it's like a tease.
And it can be especially bad for people who are trying to buy at the manufacturer's suggested retail price.
Right, the MSRP.
Exactly, because in a high-demand market like this, MSRP often becomes more of a dream than a reality.
It's like a mythical creature.
Yeah, you might see it occasionally, but it's not the norm.
Especially online.
Now, there was also this interesting discussion about how the expectation of reprints influences buying behavior.
Yeah.
Because there's this general feeling in the Pokemon TCG community that everything eventually gets reprinted.
Right, it's just a matter of time.
So how does that affect the decisions that collectors and investors make?
Well, collectors might be hesitant to pay a premium for new releases.
Yeah, you don't want to overpay for something that might get reprinted later.
And investors have to factor in the possibility of reprints when they're thinking about long-term value.
Right, because a reprint can really hurt your investment.
Absolutely. But of course, the timing and scale of those reprints is always uncertain.
So it's a gamble.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
There was also this really interesting point about trying to sell products closer to MSRP,
Oh, okay.
like as a way to support the community.
Right, make the hobby more accessible.
Exactly, but then you also have to consider the needs of investors.
Yeah, because they're looking for a return on their investment.
Right, so it's this tricky balance between making the hobby affordable and also recognizing that some people are in it for the financial aspect.
It's a complex ecosystem.
It really is.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I thought was fascinating was that there was still really high demand for Prismatic Evolutions.
Even though it wasn't a new set.
Yeah, and it was even higher than the demand for Journey Together, which was a newer set.
So what does that tell us?
Well, it shows that market value isn't always tied to how good a set is perceived to be. Like Prismatic Evolutions. It gave some mixed reviews.
Yeah, some people didn't love it.
But it has nostalgia, it has some highly sought-after cards. It was very popular when it was first released.
So those factors can outweigh any negative opinions.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And speaking of Journey Together, there was a lot of discussion about its price trajectory
Okay.
and how it had dropped pretty significantly from its initial pre-sale highs.
So it lost some of its hype?
Yeah, some people were even calling it a crash.
Wow. A little dramatic, but I get it.
It does show you how volatile the market can be, especially with new releases.
Right, those pre-order prices can be inflated.
Exactly. And then when the actual demand doesn't meet the hype, the price corrects.
So it's a good reminder to be cautious with those pre-orders.
Now, in contrast to that, it seems like the prices of Scarlet and Violet era booster boxes were stabilizing around the $200 mark.
Okay.
So this might give us an idea of what the market considered to be a fair value for current standard sets at that time.
Right, it's where supply and demand were meeting.
Yes, exactly. Now, one more interesting tidbit about Journey Together.
Okay.
Even though it wasn't performing that well in the market, some people were saying that they really enjoyed opening it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, and they specifically mentioned that the gold rare cards might actually be rarer than the special illustration rares,
Really?
but they weren't as valuable.
So rarity doesn't always equal value.
Exactly. It shows you that there are other factors at play.
Like what?
Well, the playability of the card,
Mm-hmm.
the popularity of the Pokemon featured on the card,
Okay.
and just the overall desirability of the artwork.
Yeah, sometimes a card is just really cool to look at.
Exactly, and those factors can outweigh pure rarity.
Makes sense.
All right, we're almost through the market analysis here.
Okay.
One thing that came up was how pre-order behavior can really affect the market
Oh, yeah.
because it's so easy to cancel pre-orders,
Right, no consequences.
and that can lead to these speculative bubbles.
Like people pre-ordering just to try and flip the product.
Exactly, and then when they cancel their pre-orders after the set is released, the price crashes.
So it creates a lot of volatility.
Yeah, and some people were suggesting that we need more accountability in the pre-order system.
Like what kind of accountability?
Well, maybe some kind of penalty for canceling pre-orders or a system where you have to put down a deposit.
Okay. So that people are more committed to actually buying the product.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
right now it's just too easy to game this system.
Yeah, it's not a level playing field.
And then there were the usual questions about investment potential.
Right.
People were comparing specific cards like Ninetales versus Cerealage,
Okay.
trying to figure out which one was a better investment.
Tough choices.
And they were also talking about which types of products might be better for reprints.
Oh, like bundles versus ETBs?
Exactly. And which older sets might be good long-term holds, like Evolving Skies.
So the financial aspect of the hobby was definitely top of mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the concept of MSRP, that was also debated. And it seems like there was a difference of opinion between online communities and people buying from regular retail stores.
How so?
Well, online MSRP is often just a starting point.
Right.
Like the prices on eBay and the other marketplaces, they're usually much higher.
Yeah, supply and demand.
But in retail stores, you might actually find products closer to MSRP, especially if you're lucky.
If you're at the right place at the right time.
Exactly. So it creates this disconnect between what the price should be and what people are actually paying.
And that can lead to some frustration.
Yeah, especially for those who are trying to stick to a budget.
Right.
Now, there was also some talk about potential tariffs on Japanese Pokemon TCG products
Okay.
and how that might affect prices.
So this is an external factor that can really shake things up.
Yeah, and it's hard to predict how it's going to play out.
Right. Will the tariffs be temporary or permanent?
And how will they affect supply and demand?
Lots of uncertainty.